Greetings, my name is Susan Stevenson and I'm the Director of the Freedom Wellbeing Institute. Welcome to this webinar about the Universal Wellbeing Model. In this webinar, I'm going to tell you about the outcomes of a 15-year wellbeing research program that was conducted in New Zealand. The objective of the research program was to identify an evidence-based wellbeing model and practices that are capable of supporting understandings and measurable improvements in well-being. The purpose of the research was to progress attendance, engagement, participation, retention, productivity, and equity outcomes in higher education and other settings. The researchers began by addressing 4 questions. What is well-being? How is well-being influenced? How can well-being be measured? And how can well-being be improved over time? The researchers used a diverse range of methods: themed literature reviews, meta-theory reviews, use-inspired practice research, traditional research, quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method investigations, and they also used impact evaluation and grounded theory. 4 findings have emerged from this wellbeing research program: the Universal Wellbeing Model, the determinants of universal wellbeing, a universal wellbeing definition, and a universal wellbeing evaluation tool. In this webinar, I will focus on explanations of the Universal Wellbeing Model. You may see the Universal Wellbeing Model shown like this, but this diagram shows only 2 of the 4 components in the Universal Wellbeing Model. The Universal Wellbeing Model first component is what we call sensory inputs. So sensory inputs impact our well-being over time. They can be single or multiple sensory inputs. That is what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch during real-life experiences and also through digital means. Both of these can be powerful and impact our well-being. When these sensory inputs are received, they go to our brain. And our brain then begins to process those sensory inputs to find out what they mean for us. One of the first things that our brain rapidly does is identify if new sensory inputs signal that we are in some kind of danger or there is some kind of threat. For example, if I put my hand close to a fire, my brain is likely to identify the heat, to sense the heat through touch against my hand and to cause me to actually pull my hand back. Now, I don't need to consciously think about this. My brain works so rapidly to identify and protect me from threats that it will cause that behavior of lifting away my hand to occur in order to protect me. So our brain's quite amazing things. If our brain doesn't identify that a sensory input is a threat, then it will continue to process the input or inputs to find out and interpret what they actually mean for us. And then the brain, just as in the case of the threat that I've presented, the brain will also cause other behaviors to occur. So depending on the meaning and the interpretation the brain gives to different sensory inputs, it will then cause different behaviors to occur. So sensory inputs manifest as behaviors after the brain has processed them. They could be social, physical, intellectual, cultural, ethnic, emotional, or spiritual behaviors. And so these behaviors can then be supportive of our universal well-being, or they could be neutral, or they might be potentially or actually harmful to our universal well-being. Now, during our program of research, we identified behaviours that could have these impacts on our universal well-being. So this table shows us what we call the 70 determinants of universal well-being. Now, originally we called them variables until we identified significant bodies of literature that actually linked these behaviours to the state of well-being. So these behaviours are set out here, and there are 70 of them, are all behaviours that potentially could support our universal well-being. They could be neutral, or they could be potentially or actually harmful to our universal well-being. So, for example, the first determinant mentioned is self-talk, those internal conversations we have. So we may find when we're thinking about doing something that we have a self-talk process that is positive and encouraging, that gets us to examine something and supports us taking action or behaving in ways that are positive and supportive of our universal well-being. Or we might find that our self-talk, in fact, is negative and destructive and may lead us into directions that, for example, could be harmful to our universal well-being. And so this pattern continues with all of the determinants set out in this table. Now, really importantly, overarching the universal well-being model, there are 5 principles, and these principles help us to understand the model and to align and to link and actually be able to apply the model effectively in practice. So some of the important things the principles tell us is that this model should be viewed holistically, that all that we see and learn about it is important. We're not building a hierarchy here where some things are more important than others. The principles also urge us to understand that the model is an integrated, that all the different components are interwoven, interlinked, and interdependent. So often, for example, a behaviour might turn up in one area, but its origin might be somewhere else or in several other places. The principles also urge us to view the different components as being of equal importance and support us to undertake balanced development when we are looking to improve our universal well-being. The model is also designed to empower, to help people to understand what universal well-being is and how it actually works, so they can actually be empowered to take action to improve their universal well-being. So the model and understanding of it can help us to understand where we have strengths and talents, and also areas where we have potential or actual harms occurring to our well-being that we may want to take action to stop. The final principle encourages us to understand that the model is responsive to diverse individuals and collective differences. So it is responsive to differences in ethnicity, culture, beliefs, age, gender, and so on. And this is intentional. In this slide, I show you a full colour picture of the Universal Wellbeing Model. And of course, there is much more to learn about the actual determinants of universal well-being, how the different dimensions are distinguished, and so on. But in this one slide, you can actually see all 4 components of the Universal Wellbeing Model. Now, you can access free black and white copies of this model, or you can go to a shop if you would like a colour version of this full version of the model. Now, the Universal Wellbeing Model is being applied in a range of diverse areas. It's being used by individuals to learn more about their well-being, to understand it in order to reach aspirations and to thrive. It's being used by educators at all different levels of the education system to support students and also to support educators and staff teams to understand and differentiate, for example, learning needs from well-being needs, and to see the distinctions, the evidence-based distinctions and relationships between these 2 areas. It's also being used by businesses to increase profit and productivity by supporting workplace well-being, to help people really understand how well-being works, what their well-being status might be as an individual or in a team or across an organisation, and also to understand at the most advanced level how our own behaviour might be impacting the well-being of others. The model is also being used by family groups and people in the health sector, business sector, manufacturing and other sectors. So it has wide applicability in this development of understanding of what universal wellbeing is and how it works is a concept we refer to as wellbeing literacy. So that's understanding enough about your wellbeing to be able to make positive changes to it. If you want to learn more, I encourage you to go to our website. We run a range of one public and a range of professional education programs for people who might want to use this model at more advanced levels. The Certificate in Universal Wellbeing is a fantastic starter program that includes 12 sessions and also a universal wellbeing evaluation, so people can really accelerate and optimise improvements in their own well-being. We also have a program prospectus and resources available at our website. There's posters, prospectuses and other resources that you can access there. So if you'd like more information, I encourage you to go to www.fwi.ac.nz, or you could email us if you're looking for particular information, or perhaps you might even want to work with us on a research project or workplace wellbeing activity. I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get access to more information about the Universal Wellbeing Model and other resources and activities that we provide to support your universal wellbeing journey. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you again.